Welcome. Hi, everyone. My name is Jada Lorraine. I'm going to be leading a session on Intro to DJing on behalf of Beats by Girls for their BBG TV series. And yeah, what I was just touching on when you couldn't hear me was basically a pretty standard DJ controller. This is called a Pioneer DDJ SB2. So this is the controller I own. This works in conjunction with Serato DJ in particular, which is the program that you all see in front of you. I'm gonna go over some basic concepts and then some more Serato specific concepts. So if you do have Serato downloaded on your computer, I would advise you to open it now and kind of follow along with what I'm doing. Yeah, so if you don't have Serato, you can also download it now and follow along as well. I do believe they have a 30-day free trial or something like that. So yeah, feel free to do that, and I'm gonna jump right into it. So essentially with DJing, what you're doing is you are blending two separate tracks together to kind of either create a third unique kind of sounding track or to create a harmonious transition from one track to the next, whether that be for a recorded mix, whether you're at a party. It's essentially the blending of music together in a way that's audibly pleasing, that makes sense, and that sounds good. And so yeah. If you look at the Serato screen, you'll see there are two separate decks. So you have your left deck and your right deck. And these two decks are essentially where you blend your music together. So what I'm going to touch on first is building a crate. Now, what a crate is it's essentially a folder of music for a particular purpose, whether that's for a DJ set, whether it's for archival purposes. Organizing your music into different crates can really help you archive your music or just have it more readily available when you're DJing. So for example, if you look on the left-hand column here, these are all my crates that I've built inside of Serato. I have a whole bunch. I actually need to go through and sort them, but you see there's quite a few. And there's different ways to organize your crates, but what I tend to do is I like to create a new crate for each DJ gig that I have. But essentially, it's really based on your preference. But for now, I'm going to show you how to build a crate. So essentially, if you look over here on the left-hand side, you'll see this yellow box. And if you click on the yellow box, a new crate will pop up. And if you double-click, you can name your crate. So we'll call this one Beats by Girls. And now we're ready to start loading music into this folder. And the way you do that is you can drag your music from iTunes, or you can set up Serato in settings so that your iTunes automatically routes to your Serato. So when you download new music on iTunes and then you open Serato, it'll automatically show up, which is how I have mine set up. That actually might be a default thing. But yeah, so if I come to the top and I click all, then I can see all of my music in one place, right? So, okay, so in order to make this set, I can either go through and search my songs in this search bar on the right hand side, and do it that way, or I can build a folder on my desktop or in iTunes and do it that way. So if you look on the left hand side, you see where it says iTunes. All my folders from iTunes are also showing up here, so then I don't necessarily have to make another crate. And if you notice, I have a lot of my music organized by genre, some by year, if you see over here. But I like to organize everything into genres in iTunes so that when I come into Serato and I know I have a gig coming up, let's say for a 90s themed party, then I know, okay, I need 90s music. So I can either go into my 90s folder. Oh, I guess I don't see my 90s folder, but anyway, I can go into my 90s folder, I can go into my hip hop folder, I can go into any of those folders that I know apply to this particular event that I'm DJing, and then I can go ahead and select music from those folders and drag it into my Beats by Girls folder. So let's say, I don't know, let's say I want some Mariah Carey. So I type in Mariah Carey, and here's all the Mariah Carey I have in my Serato. So when I find a song that I like, then I can just click on it and drag it into the folder, and then it shows up there. So yeah, once you have your crate, let's say I'm doing a Mariah Carey themed event. So I want to use all the Mariah Carey I have. I can just take all of it and drag it into my Beats by Girls folder. There's also another way to build a crate that may or may not be more helpful depending on what you're looking to achieve. But if you see this little blue box next to the yellow box, it has a little S on it, that's your smart crate function. So if you click on that, then you click add rule. If I go to artist, contains, and I type in Mariah Carey and save, when I go into that crate, it's automatically going to generate all the Mariah Carey tracks that I have into this crate. So that's another way to do it, which is really useful if you have a theme party or, you know, anything of that nature. The smart crate really comes in handy. So once you have your crate organized, or at least you have all the music that you're looking to use, there are a couple ways to sort it. So I can sort it by BPM, like so. Now what BPM is, BPM stands for beats per minute. And BPM is a really, really important component of DJing because it tells you the speed of the track, which is super important when you're blending two tracks together or transitioning between two tracks. So all my music is analyzed. However, when you first input music into your Serato, it will not be analyzed. And it also has a slightly different look than what you see here. I'm going to go ahead and unplug my controller just so you can see the difference. So it looks like, well, let's see. Okay, I have Serato Play enabled, so I disable it. It'll look like this. And also, let me find an example of an unanalyzed track. Well, if you see here, a lot of these don't have BPMs, right? So if I go to the bottom here, all of these are missing BPMs. That means that they need to be analyzed for their BPM. So the way that I do that, and you want to do this prior to plugging in your equipment, is you just click this Analyze Files button, and it'll go through and analyze your files. As you see, I have a lot of music that hasn't been analyzed. So if that's the case for you, if you have a lot of music that you want to analyze in your Serato, then you can literally just click Analyze Files and let it sit for however long, and it'll analyze everything for you whenever you have time. So yeah, I'm going to plug the equipment back in. And then my 2 decks should pop back up. We'll just give it one moment. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Or write them down and we can discuss them more in depth at the end of the session. But I'm just going to give this another moment. While that's loading, I just want to briefly show you. So here's my controller, and if you notice, it looks very similar to the screen with the 2 decks on it. So I have 2 decks here, and the 2 decks on your screen are essentially these 2 decks here. So you use these to physically manipulate the decks, and it'll, whatever you do here, if you're scratching here or anything like that, it'll register on your computer once it's connected. So, that's odd. Let's hook this back up. It's just taking a minute. There we go. Okay. So, now we have our crate. And then I'm going to use a slightly different crate just for the sake of the demonstration. Let me find. Okay, let's use this one. So this has a bunch of hip-hop tracks in it. I always tell people, I think it's really important to, when you're becoming a DJ, to study the roots of DJing. And what I mean by that is not only playing the music that they were playing back then, so just getting really familiar with different genres, disco, house, hip-hop, but also being able to practice on turntables, because DJing was founded by mistake, actually, by using turntables and playing vinyl records. So, if you ever have access to turntables for practice purposes, I really, really would encourage it, because you can get that analog feel of what the first pioneer DJs were feeling, and also you can better hone in on your skills and better fine-tune your skills by playing on turntables. So anyway, now that we're set up, it's time to get into mixing. So I'm going to choose 2 songs to do this demonstration. So I'm going to do Missy Elliott, and then let's also do, let's see, Lekele 47. Seems like a good mix. Okay. Now, if you see, what I did was I just literally just dragged the song. I click it and I drag it into the deck that I want it in. Your left deck is going to control 1 Minute Man by Missy Elliott, and your right deck is going to control Girl Blunt by Lekele 47. So if you look up here, we have the name of the track, the artist. This is the BPM right here. So this song is 94 beats per minute. And this song actually also happens to be 94 beats per minute. And the thing with DJing is when you're blending two songs together, you want to make sure they're at the same BPM. So they're almost exact. This one's registering at 93.8. So essentially, what we're going to talk about next is counting music and beat matching. So when you're counting music, it's important to know that music is broken up by bars. Now, a bar is 4 counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 bar. So if I turn my music up, that's 4 bars, right? So let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So a bar is 4 counts. Now, the important thing with counting music is that, and as it relates to a transition, is that when you are blending a song into a song that's already playing, you always want to drop the new song on the first count. They call it on the 1. So if I'm playing a song, let's see, let's do that again. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I always want to make sure I'm bringing in the new song on the 1 count. So here, or here, or here, or here, right? So if you bring the new song in on the 1 count, then it's going to ensure a nice, clean, and smooth transition. So before we get into blending our songs together, I'm going to show you a little bit how to beat match. So beat matching is essentially getting both BPMs equal so that they're at the same speed, so that when they're playing together it actually sounds coherent, right? So for example, I'm at about 93.4 on the left hand side, right? So you see how they are about the same speed, so audibly they sound good together. So you know you have a good match. The numbers, if you look here, aren't exact, and that's just a symptom of dealing with turntables, because turntables aren't digital, so they're not precise. But if you're practicing with your controller, it will be a lot more precise. So the way we adjust the BPM is through the pitch fader, which is to the right of the right deck here. And then on this side, it's, oh, here we go, to the right of the left deck as well. So it's either called a pitch fader or a tempo fader or tempo control, something of that sort. But when the tempo control, or when the knob is exactly at 0, I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but when it's at 0, the song is going to play at its native BPM. So we know that Missy Elliott, that track, when it was created, when it was originally produced, they made it at 94 beats per minute. Now, if I want to speed the track up to match the other track, what I would do is, and let me know if you guys can't see me that well, but what I would do is push the pitch fader forward in order to speed it up, and I push it backwards in order to slow it down. And when you push it forward and backward, the number that you see in Serato is going to change ever so slightly. So I'm going to do it on my turntable, which you won't be able to see, but you can see inside Serato how the BPM is changing. So let me do a quick demo. So I'm going to start off at 94. Now when I push it forward and I speed it up, you see it jumped up to 96.7 or 97, whatever. So essentially, I want to fine tune the BPM until it matches the BPM of the song that's already playing. So let's say, for example, I'm at a party, I'm already playing 1 Minute Man, and it's at about 96, so I want to work on getting the other song, Girl Blunt, to 96 BPMs. So what I'm going to do is, in my headphones, sorry about that, in my headphones, I'm going to cue up the second song, and adjust the BPM so it can get to about roughly 96. And the way that I do that, also, you'll want to use headphones for this practice. I have them plugged into my turntable, but if you're using a controller, you'll see that there's a headphone jack on the controller as well. And the way that we cue up a track, so remember, 1 Minute Man is playing on the left side. If we want to cue up a track on the right side, we're going to turn this volume down so nobody can hear us cueing or mixing. And we're going to press the cue button. You'll see somewhere on your controller it has a little headphone symbol and it says cue next to it. So whichever song you want to hear in your headphones, you're going to press that cue button for that deck and the light will turn on. And then you know that your headphones will be activated. So, I'm going to cue up the left-hand side while this side is playing. Ooh, another thing good thing to know is your cue points. If you notice here and here, I have cue points. And those are just different points in the song that I want to be able to cue up quickly when I'm DJing. So if you notice here, I have a couple different cue points and I've labeled them as well. So I marked the song, the point in the song that I want to cue up. So I know that that's the first beat of the song, so I wanted to have a cue point there. And then you can double click it and write in your own label. So I wrote 8-bar intro so that I know that I have 8 bars or 8 counts of 4 until the words of the song start, which is really useful because words, 2 songs with words playing over each other can be kind of clashy. So it's better to kind of know where the words start in the song so it can be a smooth, clean, seamless transition. So yeah, in order to add a cue point, all you would do is just click this little plus sign wherever you want the cue point, and then you can label it, and if you want to get rid of it, then you can just click the little X. So I already have mine queued up. I would highly recommend queuing up all of your music that you intend to DJ outside. It'll just be really helpful and make things a lot easier when you're DJing on the spot, so you don't have to think about counting and doing all of that stuff. So that's just a little bit of DJ homework that would help you tremendously at a gig. Alright, so now that I have my song queued up, let's go back to Revolt. Oh, one more thing I'll add. Sorry if I'm a little scattered. But one more thing I'll add is that there are two ways to begin playing a song. The traditional way is scratching. So when you see the waveform moving like this, it's because I'm scratching on my turntable like this, like so. So I'm pushing the record forward and backward. So you're also able to do that with your controller. So you can scratch just like this. However, a controller also has all of these cue pads. So when you mark your cues in Serato, they'll appear in these buttons in this little bank. And you can use those and just tap on those. When you see people tapping, that's what they're doing. But you can either scratch to the rhythm of the other song or tap to the rhythm of the other song. I encourage everyone to get really familiar and comfortable with scratching because it'll just help you have a better feel for the music and just a better relationship with the decks overall.
Boy, I'ma make you love me, make you want me, and I'ma give you some attention tonight.
And what I'm doing is I'm listening in my headphones to see if it sounds seamless together, if it sounds good together, right? So as I'm listening, I'm also going to be adjusting the pitch fader to get that BPM exactly to match the other side.
No, 1 minute, wake me up, show me what you got, 'cause I don't want no 1 minute, wake me up, show me what you got, 'cause I don't want no. Tonight I'ma give it to you, throw it to you. I want you.
Okay, so now that I feel comfortable with where the BPM is, I can start the song back from the beginning. And then I can scratch it in on the 1. Remember, we want to bring it in on the 1 count. So I'm keeping a consistent count in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Wake me up, show me what you got, 'cause I don't want no 1 minute. Wake me up, show me what you got, 'cause I don't want no 1 minute. Wake me up, show me what you got, 'cause I don't want no 1 minute. Wake me up, show me what you got, 'cause I don't want no. This shit is a girl blind.
Okay, so you see how I did that? So in order, those steps are matching up the BPM, so beat matching. That's your first order of business. So when a song is playing and you've selected your next song, the first thing you want to do is make sure that the BPMs match. So I did that with my pitch fader, which is to the right of the deck. Once that was completed, I started back from my cue point, which was the first beat in the song. And you can set your cue point to whatever part in the song you want, but I just find that the beginning of the song on the very first beat is a good place to have your cue point. You can set multiple cue points wherever you want. So I go back to my cue. And the way to do that is you can either click on the cue itself inside of Serato, or on your laptop, you can use the number buttons to access your cue points. So 1 through 5 are the cue points for the left deck, and 6 through 0 are the cue points for the right deck. So if I wanted to go back, let's say I want to get back to the first cue point, and I would just press 6. And if I wanted to get to my second cue point, I press 7. My third cue point, I press 8. And it's the same on the left side as well. It's 1 through 5. So the first cue point would be 1. So So, yeah, that's another reason why it's really good to have everything queued up ahead of time. So, yes. Okay, so we beat matched, and then after that, we got back to our cue point, and then we figure out where we want to drop the song in, and we always make sure we're dropping it in on the 1. And then once we do that, the final step is tweaking and fine-tuning, because if you're scratching or even if you're tapping the pads on your controller, you'll always run the risk of human error, which means that the song that you're bringing in is sometimes going to be too slow, a little bit too slow, or a little bit too fast. And the way we remedy that is either by pushing or tapping. That's what the techniques are called. So pushing essentially refers to speeding up the track, while tapping refers to speeding down the track. And it's slightly different on turntables, but I'll give you a quick demo on the controller. So say this song is playing, and I drop the second song in on the 1, but it comes out slightly too slow. What I want to do is push this forward just a little bit, give it a little nudge, and that will get it up to speed with the other track. And conversely, if it's a little bit too fast, then you can tap it like so, kind of like drag it backwards to slow it down just a little bit. And it's essentially the same thing on turntables. So if the song's a little bit too fast, I can push the vinyl record forward just a little bit, or I'm sorry, if it's too slow, I can push it forward just a little bit, or I can tap it as it's spinning to kind of slow it down a little bit. So let me give you an example. I'm going to show an example of it coming in off, and then how I can adjust it to make sure that it matches up. Off a little bit too slow, and then I pushed it just a little bit. I gave it a little bit of a nudge, and it brought it back even with the first song. So you want to do all of that in your headphones, so the people at the party or the club or wherever you're DJing aren't hearing you kind of like fine-tune the sound beforehand. And if you remember, while the first song is playing, we have the volume up for that channel, but the second song, we have the volume down, and we're listening in our cue by activating the cue button. So once we have a good match and we feel comfortable with our match, what we do is we kind of slowly nudge the volume fader for the second track up to match the volume for the first track. So you see, what I'm going to do is slowly move the volume up, so there's a gradual progression where you hear the second sound or the second song slowly coming in, blending in with the first song. So let me do a quick demo for you.
Show me what you got, cause I don't want no 1 minute man. Break me off. Show me what you got, cause I don't want no 1 minute man. Break me off. Show me what you got, cause I don't want no 1 minute man. Break me off. Show me what you got, cause I don't want no.
So you see how it slowly, gradually got louder? That was because I was slowly, gradually pushing up the volume fader. If you want a more dramatic start, you can hit it straight up if you want. Or there are other ways to transition in and out of a blend. But that's really as basic as it gets. A simple blend. You're playing one song, you slowly build up blend that one song into the second song into the first song. Sorry. So yeah, that's basically the gist of a transition. So we learned how to build a crate. We learned how to beat match. We learned how to set up cue points for our music. We learned how to cue up our headphones so we can listen and match up the two songs together in private to prep for when we're ready to bring out the second song. And then we did a transition. So, yeah, I think that covers all of the basics, like the super basics. There's a lot more I can teach you. But those are the very basic concepts in terms of blending two songs together. Now, let's say I do my transition and now I'm playing my second song. What I would do is take the volume out on the first song. So now it's like, here, let me do that transition one more time so you can get what I'm saying. So if you notice, I quickly took out the volume from the first song.
This shit is a girl blunt. I only smoke girl blunts. This shit is a girl blunt.
So then you're ready to cue up your next track. So while Girl Blunt is playing, then I can go back into my crate and figure out what song I want to play next. And that's essentially it. What I would say is take your time. Take as much time as you need with your transitions. If you look in this little white circle, it gives you basically the time count of the song. So this is how much of the song has played thus far, and then this is how much of the song is left. So you always want to be mindful of how much of the song is left so you can transition before the song ends. But otherwise, take your time. Don't feel pressured to bring in a new track right away. Make sure that your transition is really clean and smooth and you feel good about how it sounds before you bring it in, because that's really important. Having a nice, clean, seamless blend is more important than how quickly you're transitioning songs. So yeah, I think we have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to get into some of your questions. If you have any questions that you haven't submitted, please send them in and I will get to them now. Okay. Do you find yourself using the same crate for different parties / events, or do you create a specific crate for each event? That's a good question. It depends. I would say it really depends on what type of DJ you are. If you're open format, which means that you play a lot of different genres of music, then you might not necessarily play the same kind of music at every event. You know what I mean? However, there are times where, let's say I played a Caribbean party one night 3 months ago, and I thought my set was excellent and it had a lot of like really relevant, good Caribbean music that I would want to play at another event. Then yes, I would reference that old crate and maybe add some new tracks to it, or play it in a different order. But I would reference that crate to get some inspiration for the next Caribbean party that I would play. So you can definitely do that for sure. What's a good starter controller, or do you suggest we start off with a Pro controller and Serato Pro? So it really all depends on your budget. Like I mentioned, you can, if you are on a tight budget, you can use Virtual DJ, which will allow you to do all of these things within your laptop. while you save up to invest in your equipment, that's definitely a good tool. I believe it's free as well. But I would recommend a Pioneer controller. Pioneer has, I think their lowest price point for a starter controller is about $250, which is a good price. And then from there, it really depends on how far you intend to take your DJ career. You know, a small controller might be all you need because it's portable. You can bring it to your gigs. You can use it in a setting where it's like, you know, you're outside and you don't necessarily need that full club DJ setup. Or if you tend on getting a controller to just practice on, to eventually be able to DJ on club standard equipment, then I would say just get the cheapest one and, you know, really hone your skills on there and understand the concepts and get really familiar with everything and then move up from there. But you don't necessarily have to get a really expensive or quote-unquote professional controller. I advise everyone to start small and start within your budget and just really master all of these little concepts first before you move on to something more pricey and more intricate. Okay, why do we have to analyze music? So the reason you want to analyze your music is so that you know the BPM of the track. Most of the time, it's not going to automatically tell you the BPM unless you analyze it. Alternatively, you can count the BPMs if you want in your head. Like, if you start a timer for 60 seconds and you literally just count the beats in the song, then you can find the BPM that way. But it's really important to know the BPM so that you know what other songs it meshes well with in general. DJ Pro. So I'm not super familiar. Sorry, let me read the question first. It says, is there a reason you use /like Serato for your software? I use DJ Pro, but I would love to know the pros and cons of Serato. Thank you for being here. Okay, so you don't have to use Serato. There are other softwares that you can use, like Rekordbox, like Tractor, which is Native Instruments program. I just find that Serato is the most commonly used in the industry. So it's the easiest to kind of, how should I say this? It's the most standard equipment in the DJ industry. So if you are planning to DJ in clubs and things like that, they're most likely going to have a Serato compatible setup. If you use Tractor or any of these other programs, you might have to bring your own equipment. So if you don't mind bringing your own equipment, then it's cool to use other programs. I know a lot of people use Tractor that really like Tractor for different reasons. I started on Serato just because I know it's the industry standard. But yeah, it's really a preference thing. If DJ Pro is working for you, then go for it. Let's see. So you use the pitch fader to change the BPM. Absolutely. That's exactly what the pitch fader is for. So the pitch fader, let me just show you one more time, is this little fader right here. And let me just mention one more time that if you push it forward, it's going to increase the BPM. And if you push it backwards, it's going to decrease the BPM and make it slower. So yes, that is the sole purpose of the pitch fader, is to control the BPM. This is so helpful. Thank you. This covered so much. Absolutely. I'm happy to be a resource. If any of you guys have any additional questions after you go to your stations and practice at home, feel free to hit me up. How do you usually switch between tracks with different keys? Is there a way to match the key signature of two songs? That's a really good question. I didn't touch on that because it's a little bit more advanced. But since you asked, let's get into that. So the thing with key, not a lot of let me not say not a lot, but some DJs don't even consider key when they're DJing. However, I would advise you to mix in key because it's going to make your music sound a lot better. So if you notice, with the two songs that we used, 1 Minute Man is in the key of 8A and Girl Blunt is in the key of 5A. Now, they're pretty close in terms of key, so they sounded relatively good together. But the closer in key that two songs are, the better it's going to sound. So if you look here, if I mixed... Here, let's organize this by key as well. If I mix two 6A tracks together, it's going to sound amazing because they're already in the same key. That doesn't mean that you can't use songs that are in separate keys, but just keep in mind that the closer together in key that they are, the better that it's going to sound. And if you go online and search mixed in key, there's a little chart that will show you what keys sound good together. But yeah, that's a very good question. Okay, what's next? Oh, and in terms of matching the key signature, once you analyze your tracks, for most songs, it'll show you the key. So that's another good reason to analyze. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't have to be an exact match, but it will sound a lot more audibly pleasing if they're the same key or they're close in key. So yeah. What are good starter music libraries / ways to have access to a lot of music? That's a great question. There are a few different things I would recommend. One thing I would recommend is getting a subscription to a DJ pool. And a DJ pool is essentially a pool or like a large library of music where you pay a subscription fee, whether it be $20 or $50 a month, and then you have unlimited access to download any of the music in that library. So I would suggest doing your research on different DJ pools based on the genres of music that you like or that you want to play. One really popular one is Franchise Record Pool, which is the DJ pool that I subscribed to when I first started, and I still have a subscription. They have a lot of top 40, a lot of hip-hop, they have Caribbean music, R&B, all of that kind of mainstream kind of stuff. I really like Franchise because they make intro edits to songs that don't have intros in them. So for example, you just go to my full music library. If I type in intro, if you look here, I have all of these different edits with intros on them. So let me just play one of them for you. And if you see here, I've marked it with an 8-bar intro. That means that it's going to have 8 bars in the very beginning of the song where there are no lyrics. So let me play that for you. And the thing is, those are really good to practice with as well because it's good to practice blending with music that doesn't have lyrics. So that's something good to keep in mind. Another good one is DJ City. I know a lot of DJs that I know subscribe to DJ City. They have a lot of edits and stuff as well, if that's what you're into. I think it's a little bit more pricey. But like I said, do your research and see what works for you in terms of your musical taste and your budget and things like that. Also, I would suggest kind of just like finding music anywhere. Like YouTube has a lot of really good music. If you're into like more obscure and rare kinds of music, YouTube is excellent. Discogs will help you discover music. You can't purchase digital files through Discogs. You can purchase music on vinyl from Discogs. However, it has such an expansive music library. A lot of music that you find on there you won't be able to find on streaming, and you won't be able to find anywhere else. So YouTube, Discogs. There's also sites like Beatport, Track Source, if you're more into like dance music and house music, which is what I play a lot of times. Those sites are really great for that, and then you can just buy MP3s from there. But yeah. Let's see. What do you do if Serato analyzes a song incorrectly? This has happened to me with older songs in Record Box. So, there is a way to, and I don't think you can do this on the controller. But anyway, on most mixers, there's this tap button where you can literally tap out the rhythm of the song and it'll tell you the BPM. Alternatively, like I mentioned, you can literally just count the number of beats over a 60-second period. So you can start a timer for 60 seconds and count the beats and do it that way. Yeah, Serato isn't accurate 100% of the time. Most of the time it is. But with certain music that's heavy with instruments, or it has different parts of the song where like one part of the song is fast and then has an interlude, or it has a moment where it slows down, sometimes it'll throw off the BPM for the digital analyzer. So yeah, it's also just kind of good to train your ear so that if that happens and you're mixing a song that's not accurately analyzed, you kind of know if it's too fast or too slow. So when you're mixing, try to use your ear and not watch the waveform if possible, because then it'll train your ear, and then you'll be able to determine if you come across one of those situations, if the song is too fast or too slow. But yeah, like I said, you can just count them out using a timer. Okay, what's next? I see you're associated with a collective called SKILLSHARE NYC. What is that? Would love to hear more about it. So SKILLSHARE is a music educational series that prioritizes women, gender nonconforming, and trans people of color in Brooklyn. It's something that I started in March of 2019. I kind of did it as like a one-off month-long session of different workshops for Women's Month. And we did 12 different workshops, some on DJing, turntables, CDJs, some with production, some about event production and different topics like that. Excuse me. But there was such a high demand for what I was doing that people kept asking me to organize more workshops after that month was over. So it kind of just became a monthly workshop series, workshop and discussion series, where I invite local DJs or producers, women, trans, and non-binary, people of color for the most part, or allies as well. We don't discriminate. Everybody's welcome as long as they understand that this series prioritizes marginalized people who don't otherwise have access to a lot of resources that I try to provide. So yeah, it's really just a safe space for women and non-binary and trans people to come together and learn and make friends and make peers with similar interests, and just feel comfortable doing so. Because when I first started DJing about 6 years ago, I just remember wanting mentorship and wanting community and space where I felt comfortable, because this industry is heavily dominated by men. So yeah, now that I feel more comfortable with my position, I just feel it's my duty to kind of create that space for other people who are interested in learning about DJing or production, but don't know where to start and don't necessarily feel comfortable and feel like it's daunting. So that's what SKILLSHARE is. We've been taking a brief hiatus just because I'm trying to figure out the best way to move forward, being that we're in quarantine. So I've done a couple of virtual sessions, but it really is a face-to-face kind of thing, because I think it's important to be able to learn together and be tactile and touch the equipment and mess up, and then have somebody be able to tell you what you did wrong and correct you and help you figure out the right way to do it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's what Skillshare is. I know it's 3 o'clock, so if we have any final questions, please feel free to send them through. But yeah, this has been an excellent session. If you haven't already, please make sure to follow Beats by Girls. They also do a lot of workshops and virtual things. I know they primarily focus on production, but they're open to music education in general. And they're an excellent resource. I know that they're going to be doing, I'm not sure if this is their last session of their July series, but they have done a couple other sessions this month that I believe are archived that you can check out. But yes, they're great people, and another really great resource. And thank you so much, Cassie and Kriti, for making this possible. I'm going to close this out in just a minute. So if you would like to follow Skillshare, you can do so at Skillshare NYC on Instagram. Beats by Girls is at Beats by Girls on all channels. And I'm going to close this out and show you all my social handles if you wanted to follow me. I thank you all so much. Don't be a stranger. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. And I hope to see you all very, very soon.